Well, I'm not able to get a hold of Bobby, but since I have people on here and I screwed this up yesterday, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what we were going to talk about. And we were getting into some of the core beliefs the last couple times we did this. And hold on just a second. And so we were talking about the core beliefs. We've done a couple little video casts about that. And we were going to wrap that up today. Like I said, I tried to do this with the Facebook Live yesterday. It didn't work very well. So I'll go ahead and keep trying on the computer. But the idea was that Bobby, who was on some of my other videos, was going to join, and we were going to chat a little bit here. So until I see him come on, I can't really do anything like that, but I'll go ahead and... Somebody says it's frozen. Bobby says he can't see it. I'll tell you what I'm going to do is start it over and see if we can make this work. If you are watching and you can see me, would you just say something? All right, well, I'm going to assume it's still going. Bobby, if you are on here, say hi so I can invite you in. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep going. All right, so what we are doing is, thank you, is it Lila? I will continue then. We were on core belief number 16, and that was from a reader who had mentioned one of the beliefs that she's had that she struggled with was I am damaged. And so I wrote that blog based around the idea of being damaged. And this was an interesting one for me because it's such a strong belief, and one that I think, a lot of us have felt in our times, especially when we're, deep in addictions. And it comes from the idea of being broken, right? And, so when I looked up the word damaged, that's basically what it's saying, is that something that's broken. And so what I started to think about was, in life, what keeps us going, what gets us up in the morning. And part of that is just having purpose, right? Having something to, that we feel we need to do. And if we feel broken, then we don't have that thing. And that is where I think, we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble, especially with the addictions. And so what I was writing for him on that point is, if we're feeling broken, we need to find a new way to look at that core belief that can help kind of shape our mind and make us feel like we are capable again. And, so the opposite side of, oh wait, it looks like Bobby's there. Hold on just a second here. Bobby. And he's there, but I can't add him. Hey Bobby, if you can hear me, see if you can request to join the video, because it doesn't look like I can do it from you for some reason. So go ahead and request to join the video. I'll let you in if that happens. So rather than saying, the opposite of being damaged is being something like I am undamaged or I am not damaged, we want to have more of a positive take on how we're looking at things. And so the direction I went with that in my blog was to shift the core thinking into I am competent. And I liked that because what we're basically saying is we're capable. We're able to do the things that we want to do. And then with addiction, what we're saying is that we want to be able to start taking those steps into active recovery, and feel good about the fact that we are capable of doing that. And that kind of starts to lend to the idea that when you think of the opposite of damaged is fixing something, we want to be able to fix things. And in this case, we want to be able to fix ourselves. And so by writing competent, I looked at the dictionary definition of that as well, and I said, having the necessary ability, knowledge, or skill to do something successfully. And so I couldn't think of a better way to think about recovery as wanting to fix ourselves, right? So that was the direction I went with the idea of feeling competent as opposed to feeling damaged, is knowing that we do have this ability and the skills and everything necessary within ourselves to fix ourselves, right? And that starts with the idea of recognizing that we have an addiction, something we want to let go of, and then start taking those steps to let go of it. So that was number 16. for core beliefs. And, I wish Bobby was on here so he could give you some of his take, but we'll continue to kind of figure out how to do that as we move forward. So core belief number 17. This one I took because in the blog about being damaged, I had mentioned the idea of a victim mentality. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit in the sense of how a core belief could come from a victim mentality standpoint. And so core belief number 17 was life is unfair. And, that's something we've heard from the day we were born, right? It's that suck it up, life's unfair, deal with it, those kind of things, and if we believe that strong enough and we kind of walk through life thinking that life is unfair, what we're basically saying is that things are happening in life to us, right? And if we think that everything that is going on is happening to us, then we have the ability to kind of just say, well, it's not my fault because life's unfair, right? And so that's the direction I went with this blog, was to start thinking about how do we look at, life differently and take more of an active role in what is happening rather than just saying things are happening to us, which, I think is easier said than done at times. But again, it goes back to the idea behind core beliefs, right? Is we have to believe that we have to think differently about that. So as long as we keep telling ourselves, this happened because life's unfair, or this person did this thing to me, or this thing happened to me, then we're not able to have an active role. And that's kind of the direction I was coming from in that blog. And changing that core belief from life is unfair, I went a little bit of a different direction here because, what's the opposite of life is unfair? Life is fair. That doesn't give me much, agency. It doesn't give me much room to be active, actively engaged. So I said, as an opposing view, I said, I am fair to myself. And then I added others. And by saying that, what my intent is that if I feel like I'm fair to myself when things happen, because things inevitably are going to go wrong. And so if something happens that is negative in my life, if I can be fair about what is happening in my role, because generally speaking, we have a role, right, in everything that goes down, especially from an addiction standpoint. As an addict, I think most of us would agree that we played roles in getting ourselves to that point. And if we can acknowledge that we're playing a role, then we have to step away from the idea that things are just happening to us. We have to be able to admit that we did something that created that problem, right? And so by being fair to myself, what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, this thing happened, but I did have a role in it. Then the next step from there would be, well, what did I learn? What did I gain? What can I do differently next time? And if I do that, then I'm changing that view of things happening to me to, hey, this thing happened, I had a part in it. But rather than just brushing it off, saying, hey, it's not my fault because life's unfair, I am taking some steps into making changes. And hopefully, if we do things right, then we make some changes. And the next time, that same thing maybe won't happen again. And as we've talked about a lot in the core belief idea, what it is repetition, right? So as easily as it is to say life is unfair over and over and over to the point we start to believe it, we can do the opposite and start saying things like, I made a mistake, I learned from the mistake, and then I fixed it and moved on. We start saying we learn every time. And the more we know and understand that we can learn from something, then I think the easier that learning process becomes. And that's definitely been my experience moving through my sobriety, is every day is seeing that I am capable of doing that and learning from those things. And in fact, I had a good experience yesterday when Bobby and I tried to do our video cast, and after all the things that went wrong with Facebook, Live and all that, I kind of was just frustrated and I couldn't figure it out, and so my brain wasn't working. And in the middle of our video cast, I told Bobby I just wanted to stop because I wasn't feeling it. And that was just kind of being a truth to myself. I wasn't in the right mindset to do something. And so I stopped it and said, hey, let's do it tomorrow. So here we are tomorrow, but Bobby isn't with me, which is unfortunate. I think he's watching still, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so that's where I was going with the idea of life being unfair, and changing that into an idea of being fair to ourselves and other people, and acknowledging when we do have mistakes, and when we do have active roles in them, that we can accept that, learn from it, and then try to make our actions differently in the future to avoid those next time. And then I ended that blog with a quote that I liked a lot. It said from Tiny Buddha, which was kind of cute, but it said, when life is sweet, say thank you and celebrate, right? When the good things happen, we celebrate them. But it also says, but when life is bitter, say thank you and grow. Because as long as we're learning, we're still growing, right? And I thought that was a really kind of nice way to wrap that up. So that was core belief number 17. And then at this point, I went ahead and shifted away from core beliefs and went into a skill that I kind of picked up through therapy that I found to be very useful. And I've been playing around with a little bit as it comes up, because, you know, things happen in life, and whether it's an addiction or a craving or just a bad situation, I think if we can incorporate this skill, it's going to be very beneficial for us, but definitely in recovery. And the first time I saw myself or felt myself use this was when I was actually dealing with nicotine, not so much alcohol, because I haven't had the problem with alcohol as much. But I felt it was so useful. I'm like, well, we got to, talk about this, because I think it's something we can do with the alcohol cravings as well. And so I call it sitting with discomfort. And so I broke this one up into 3 parts. And the idea was that there are a couple things I saw happening when I did this. And the first was just recognizing it. So when we have a feeling, whether it's just a bad feeling, whether it's a craving, an urge, a desire, whatever it is, that uncomfortable feeling that we get when we're trying to stay off, let's just stay with the idea of addiction. So we'll talk about cravings. If I'm feeling a need for something, and in this case it was nicotine for me, we have to recognize that is a bad feeling that we want to deal with, and in the way we've dealt with that in the past was to use. That's how we did it. So we had the bad feeling, we used our substance or behavior, the bad feeling goes away, and we move on. And that's what we've done in the past. What I decided to do one day, and it kind of was unconscious, I didn't really mean to do it, but I had that come on with nicotine very strong. I was really struggling with it. I knew I wasn't going to do it because I'd made that choice, and I was going to stick with it no matter what, but I was trying to figure out what's a better way to deal with it. And so I literally sat down on a chair one day, put my hands on my thighs, and I just was like, okay, I am feeling this thing. And so in that first blog about this, that's what I talked about, was just recognizing what I'm feeling is a craving. It's a negative feeling. I don't like it. And I just recognizing that it's there before I did anything else. Because I think what we've, can learn in life is that anytime we react without recognizing what's going on, I think it's going to be a bad outcome. And I know everybody has experienced that from time to time. So I sat there and just recognized this is a thing. It's out there, it's happening. I need to understand that my normal path is to use nicotine or have a drink to combat that feeling. And I don't want to do that. So then what's my next step? So the second blog, I got into the idea of acknowledging the behavior or the feeling or the craving. And the way I was going with that is to not only recognize it, but give it credit. Just let it know that you're aware of it. And the way I did that was by trying to visualize it. So I acknowledged that the behavior was there, and I took that behavior and I tried to put a visual to it. And as I said in the blog, I kind of came up with things I've seen in movies that were kind of like negative or evil, and something that would kind of make me not feel good about that thing that I was feeling. And to me, it was colors and shapes. It became this kind of a visual for me that, I don't know, it worked for me. And so I took those colors and those shapes and I set them in front of me. And I said, there's that feeling. And I looked at it and I acknowledged that it was there, but I didn't give it any more credit. I just acknowledged it. And so I set it out in front of me and I just kind of watched it. And from there, I just sat with it. And that's where I think, the idea of where I named this blog was just sitting with discomfort. So I was feeling this discomfort. I recognized it, I acknowledged it, I set it away from me, and then I watched it. And so just sitting there watching it, the colors, as I said, my blog became like a red and an orange, yellow, something that was kind of, volatile. They were moving fast, and the shapes were kind of flying around, and so I just tried to pay attention to that. And what I found was, as I continued to do that over a period of time, I was able to let that adjust and change a little bit. And the way that changed was the colors started to become cooler. They started to be, more green and blues. The movement started to slow down. And as that happens, I started to feel better. And as I started to feel better, I started to feel stronger. And as I felt stronger, I kind of saw those things just disappear. And when they disappeared, I was able to just back off, stand up, and then go about my day, not feeling those anymore. And it was a neat thing that happened. And like I said, I'd heard about it in therapy. It wasn't something that I'd ever really tried to do, because I don't know that I gave it a ton of credence. But in that moment, when I did it and saw how it could work, it was a pretty good feeling for me. And since then, I've done that with other things outside of even addictions, where I just, I've had to deal with some pretty serious personal issues in the last couple months, and I use the same technique in that as well, where I just it wasn't a craving, but it was a bad feeling. I didn't like the feeling, and I sat with the discomfort. I watched it. I let it dissipate, and then was able to move about my day. And it's been pretty awesome to kind of play with, and I think it's something that can be very useful in the addiction realm anytime we have those cravings. And in the midst of all this, I looked up the idea of cravings, and what I read this article that talked about most of them have a lifespan that is only like 12 to 20 minutes. And if you can sit with that discomfort for 12 to 20 minutes, you're probably going to see it go away, and you've effectively beat that craving one time. And I think each time we beat a craving like that, we feel more confident, we feel stronger, and we can do it a little easier the next time. And that's pretty exciting, I think that's a huge growth process, and I'm seeing it kind of happen more and more every day. So that's how I wrapped up the sitting with discomforts, going through the steps. So basically, recognize that there's an issue, acknowledge the issue as being there, and actually I forgot one piece. I remember my therapist talked about looking at things from a separate piece, and that's how it got me thinking about taking that recognition and acknowledgement of that discomfort and setting it aside from me, right? So that's what I did. I put it aside. And then just visualize it, watch it, give it a shape, give it a picture. I don't know. I mean, it could be a person, it could be a, picture, it could be anything. And watch it and allow it to disappear. And when it disappears, acknowledge that you did what you needed to do, and be happy with that, and then move on and do it again the next time. So those were the pieces we were going to finish up with today. With Bobby, I think Bobby said something here. He said, today I'm responsible for my actions. And that was the scary part in the beginning. And I think what he's saying is in the beginning, maybe not feeling responsible for your actions. And once you acknowledge that you are, that is that's scary, because if you take responsibility for your actions, then you have to deal with them, right? And I think that maybe is what Bobby's saying there. And I agree 100%, and that kind of lends to this idea too. So we will work this out. Hopefully I'll be able to get Bobby on next time. I didn't want to shut this one down again like I did yesterday, since I've already done it once. I thought I would just go ahead and carry on. Bobby, if you're listening, we'll get this worked out. Hopefully I can get you to join here sometime, and which will be fun. And Bobby and I want to move into where I went with my blog, which is a completely different direction, and talking about the possibility of sobriety being easier than what we've heard or what we've seen in the past. And I am taking my own experience on that. It's not a popular belief, which I completely understand and don't have any problem with, but I can't help but say that for me, and my wife too, we both quit drinking at the same time. We've had a much easier experience with it, and I want to explore that, and I want to play with that a little bit and try to understand it more, because if we can do it, I feel like somebody else can do it. And if I can reach somebody with some of the things I've experienced and some of the things I've done that made me feel that this has been easier, then I want to try to do that. So Bobby and I are going to jump into that a little bit and see what we can come up with in terms of how to approach sobriety from a different mindset, and maybe have an easier time than maybe times in the past that we've had ourselves, or times that we've heard other people experience. So thank you guys for jumping on, checking this out. Sorry Bobby wasn't here with me this time. We will definitely make sure he is there next time, and we'll continue the conversation. I hope you guys are doing really well. Thursday, we got one more day of the weekend. Have a great weekend. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe, stay sober.